Recording. Okay, so to begin with the workshop, does everyone have access to this folder and the drive and everything? I dropped it in the programming channel here in Discord. You should be able to see a drive link. So let me know if you're good, you have access, you can see the files. And if you have your brand new project over here. Okay. Okay. So everyone inside Unity. Check. Okay. Give me a thumbs up. Everyone inside Unity. Unity. Okay. So we'll get started with the basics while people load. So first, navigation. What is this? What is this weird screen? So first off, on the top left, we got something called a hierarchy. Think of this like a hierarchy of objects that are organized in the game. And in game development, you have game objects. You basically combine things into one object. So for example, a player has HP, a player has a sprite, a player has sounds. So you combine all of that into an object. That's what we call an object. So for example, we have an object right here, which is a camera. So the camera renders everything in your Unity scene or in your game. So this is the hierarchy, and any new game object we make is going to appear over here. So why don't we try doing something basic? Let's go and hit a right click, and then that should open up a menu of different things we can create. So let's go, for example, to 2D object, sprites, and there should be square. So 2D object, sprite, square, let's click that, and that's just going to create a little square for us. So this is an example of a game object in Unity. Then this in the middle is called the scene. So think of it like a scene like in theater, how they do plays. So they have the actors doing different things. So that's the scene in Unity, which is this one. So you can toggle between scene and game, and then game is the game itself that you can play with. Then at the right we got something called the inspector, which has all the options about that object. For example, we have a transform. If you guys see that transform parameter, that is the position of a game object. So let's play around with it. Let's change the position. You can directly put your mouse over and it will appear like that, and change the position. So we change the X position, that's going to move it. We can also change the Y position, and so on. So those are the basics of these parts of the game. Now on to the tools you can use to modify. So you might see this little menu. This has a couple options. The first one is called the view tool. So it's just a standard tool you work with in Unity to pan around. And you can access with these 4 hotkeys. So you can use Q, W, E, R to work with these tools. So let's go ahead and grab a little sprite or a little square, and then just try hitting Q, W, E, R and seeing what happens. Q, W, E, R. Just see how it changes, right? So these are the different tools you use for moving things around in your game. So let's start with Q. We can use that to pan around, or you can use your left click to pan around as well. Let's try W now. So W is for changing position. So you see it has 2 coordinates. The red is for the x-axis, the green is for the y-axis. So we can use that to manipulate and move objects around. Now let's change to the E key, which is for rotation. So you can see we had the z-axis here, which is this little radius. And since we're in 2D, we just have Z rotation in this case. And then we have the R key, which is for scale. So you can also use this for scaling your object in the X and Y dimensions. Alright, so everyone following so far? Everyone up to here? Okay, so now we go back into this part right here, which is the assets. Over here you import everything related to your game. So you see this is called a scene. So a scene is an environment in your game. You could have a scene be the main menu, another scene be the game, etc. So for example, I have this game scene, which is the one you saw right before. So here I have set up the game, and I made this new empty scene called demo, where we will be working in. Also, you can delete objects by just hitting in Mac command delete, or just hitting delete on Windows. So try opening your scene here in the Explorer, and basically when you start you should have an assets folder with different assets. So it's super important when working in Unity that you organize your project. So I recommend having at least these folders. So having one called animations, one called prefabs, scenes, scripts, and sprites. So how do you make folders in Unity? Just do a right click, create, folder. Super important to keep your project organized. So while you guys create these folders, I'll go quickly get some water.
There's also like a dead space added to the environment. So, for instance, the little icon on top will show you whether or not the guards see you. The lights all have posts where you can see the direction of the lights, where they're pointing, and what areas can be seen. The circle you see around the ninja character actually depicts how much sound you're making. So that's good. You good? When they're telling you, like, this is how.
All right, everyone got the folders ready? Okay, so now let's import our sprites, our game objects. Were you guys able to access the Google Drive folder or no? Did you get the assets and everything? So we have two folders here we're going to work with. First, sprites. So here you have, ignore the meta files, don't worry about those. Download just the PNG images. So try downloading all of them to your computer. So in Drive you can hit Command to do a multi-select, just like that. Select all of the images, just like that. And then you can just download them, like so. This should zip the files, download them. Okay, after that you can just unzip them. And you'll have your files, just like that. So you might notice that they're really small. This is because we're doing pixel art with 8-bit art. So this is just 16 by 16 pixels per frame. Okay. So how are we doing? Everyone got your assets ready and downloaded? Everyone? Thumbs up? We got them? Okay. So now make sure you have your file explorer right next to your Unity. So I'm gonna take Unity out of its window like that. I'm gonna have my file explorer here at hand. And the cool thing about Unity is it just supports drag and drop for everything. So we're going to grab all the files. You guys remember we had a sprites folder like this. So let me just open the other scene really quickly, the demo scene. Okay. Okay, so here in the demo scene, we should have our sprites folder. So just click each of them and just drag and drop to the Unity scene, just like that. And you should see like a plus symbol, whatever, drag and drop everything. Make sure you have it inside Unity.
It's really just food and just make it way thinner and let this be more focused. And then this would then pop back out when you actually go back to this menu. Because this is mostly on, the only thing you really need to know is that you're in food. So this is completely pointless. So you can just pop that out.
Okay, so everyone got all the sprites? All good? Okay, so now the sprites will most likely look really blurry. So let me open up one as an example so you guys can see. Let's draw the alien, for example, right here. And if we check it out, you might notice that it looks kind of blurry if we open it inside Unity. So how can we see? First, let's break this into individual sprites. How are we gonna do that? Select all of the sprites. You might notice this is not only one sprite, this is multiple. So this is what we call a sprite sheet. A sprite sheet means it's an animation with many sprites in different frames. So let's grab this, let's grab all of the ones who are sprite sheets. So we have our idle animation. Do you guys know what an idle animation is? Yeah? Would anyone like to tell us what is an idle animation? Idle animation.
You're not moving the character, so the character starts doing like movements like pass time around.
Yeah, exactly. When you're not moving, you don't want the player to think its game froze, right? So you want to keep your character doing a little idle animation. So there's that. So I think it's just these three animations: alien walk, idle, and player walk. So once you have all of those selected, you can select with the Shift key or the Control key. So make sure this setting right here, let me maximize this by the way, sorry about that. So this one should say Sprite to the UI. So this is the texture. We're going to be working with sprites in Unity. A sprite is just basically a render, something that you render in 2D space. That is a sprite. So once you have that selected, sprite mode, we're going to change to multiple. We have multiple sprites. So let's do that. And then we also have here a setting that says compression. We don't want any compression. We want the best quality we can have. So just leave this as none. And then last but not least, yeah, I think that should be about it. for these images. There should also be a setting over here that says filter mode. So make sure that is set to point, no filter. I'm gonna tell you why. So let's say we have a filter, right? Let's drop this into our Unity scene. Let's just drop like one sprite. So let's drop this guy, right? Let's scale him up. So like I was saying, QWER to scale. So I'm just gonna scale him up so we can see him better.
Yeah, so you see a lot more, and also there's a lot more to navigate. So instead of just going
like that.
You can go kind of move to the eye.
And this guy has this sprite over here. So let's say we have bilinear, right? Watch what happens when I change it to bilinear. See how it's blurry? So it's like a compression algorithm that makes it look smooth. But we're working with 8-bit art. So make sure this is set to point, no filter. And you can see how much more crisp it looks. So let's get rid of that for now. Okay, now we have the basic setup. Now this should be just one image. We want to slice it into 4 images, just like this. So we have our alien here, right here. It's just a single image, like that. So the reason we set it to multiple over here is we can slice it into each slice. So let me apply that. And now this is going to open this tool. If this tool doesn't open automatically, you can click here in Sprite Editor. So if you click there, it opens this tool so we can slice it. So you can go here in Slice. This is going to open up a menu with a couple options. By the way, am I going too fast, too slow? Is everyone being able to follow? Over here, so you select over here your sprite. Then make sure this is set to multiple over here. And then click on Sprite Editor over here. Editor.
Ever modded Skyrim. The number one modded UI is Sky UI.
Okay.
So what?
Everyone thumbs up? We're following? No one behind? Okay.
Original UI.
So now we're gonna go ahead and slice into the individual frames of this little alien. So we can go here to slice. And instead of automatic, we're going to do grid by cell size. So we know the dimensions of this because I made them a while ago. So we can just change the dimensions to 16 by 16 in X and Y, like that. So grid by cell size, and then just make it 16 by 16. So whenever you guys make your art, make sure you memorize the dimensions. In this case, 16 by 16. And you'll see these little red squares appear. So that is the slice. And if you want to apply the slice, you're gonna be clicking on slice over here. So that should cut up everything. And you should have your individual shapes like that. Before leaving, make sure you press apply over here.
It is wider though, like one panel, but also
And now, as you might notice, Unity has sliced up into each individual frame for us. So the reason this is really convenient is if you store each individual sprite, you're using a different memory address. So that uses a lot of space. So if you use a single sprite and just cut it up, that uses way less memory and is more efficient for the game.
Not even listed.
Okay, so everyone got their alien correctly sliced?
So in this
Thumbs up, everyone? Got it? All right. So now let's do a little bit of playing with animation. So how we generate animation is super easy in Unity. We just gotta select all the sprites. So select this one. I'm gonna hold down Shift and then select all of them like that. So once you have all of them selected, as I was saying, Unity is always drag and drop, super easy. Drag and drop to the scene, boom. Now this is gonna prompt us with a window. We want to save this animation. The reason I was saying that we gotta be ordered is so that this doesn't happen. So we should have in our assets folder over here a folder that says animations or animations and controllers, and then make sure you save it here. Give it a good name because you want to find it later. So for example, this is a walk animation, so I'm gonna call it alien walk animation. And afterward, you can just go ahead and press save. So our animations will be ready and saved. So our alien is incredibly tiny compared to screen size. So why don't we scale them up? We're going to use the X and Y dimensions here. So we have 3 parameters: position, rotation, scale. Let's play a little bit with scale. So let's set the X scale to 10, and let's set the Y scale to 10 as well. And let's see what size we get. Oh, I think I didn't update this. So yeah, point, no filter, compression, no compression. Okay, great. Okay, done. Okay, so everyone got your alien here in the scene? At your animation? Okay, so let's see your alien in action, shall we? Let's go to game. Now this is gonna be small. If you wanna maximize it, try double clicking here. And that's gonna maximize it so you can see better. And then let's go and just hit play and see what happens. So it's running a little walk animation now, which is nice. So this is like the introduction to doing game objects in Unity, animation, and all of that. So let's go ahead and do the same thing, but for our player character. So same deal as we did. We're going to click here, make sure we have multiple, compression none, and make sure we have point no filter. So multiple here, multiple sprites, then filter, no filter, point, and then no compression. And then I'm gonna give to you guys as an assignment, go ahead and slice it. If anyone doesn't remember how to slice, let me know and I can go over it again. And also create an animation. So after slicing, create your animation and drag and drop.
Any other genres. And first person and third person. There definitely is a difference if you look at this. Yeah. Our wonderful samurai. Our lovely UI for you guys. So all in all, really,
So I'm gonna use size 10 as well. I think that's reasonable. Let me know if you guys were able to set it up. Thumbs up whenever you're ready.
But we can drag it into the same animation.
Yeah, use the same animation folder. And then whenever you have it ready, you can just go ahead and click play and then just see the animation running. So if you have it running, just press play and then show it to the rest of us so we can see what it looks like.
Alright, thank you.
Demo time.
Quick intermission.
The idle animation is supposed to be this fast.
Oh, you can change the frame rate. We can do that after.
So here we have a Unity minigame.
Yeah, let's do idle actually.
So you can see right here. Do you guys have any suggestions how we can make this better? Any suggestions? So here, so basically I'll just explain the game. So we just shoot polygons and this is the cooldown, yeah. So reload sound.
Okay, everyone got something looking like this?
And this is the player's
Okay.
and this is the component.
Perfect, you're all animation masters now. So now we have the animation down, why don't we build a nice environment for a little astronaut and alien? So let's start by changing the background. This boring blue is pretty ugly. So we can go here to the main camera, and there's something called the skybox. So in a 3D game, you have, when the camera isn't rendering objects, you want it to render something. So you guys have probably played 3D games where you see the clouds and everything, and it looks like it's infinite. That's called a skybox. But in this case, we have a 2D game. So we're gonna change from skybox to a solid color. So that way we can choose a simple color we wanna use. So then just find any other color you like. I'm going to choose like a little gray, so it looks like the moon, just like that.
We can remove one, right?
And then I'm going to add some other objects to make it look nicer. So there should be another object called the moon crater. So we can just drag and drop that as well. Then we can scale it properly. And this should look like a little crater in the moon, like that. And you see how every time we drag and drop, it generates a new game object. So it might have a weird name like that. You can also rename it. So it's very good to rename your game objects so you can know what they do. So I'm gonna rename this one to alien. I'm gonna rename this one to player. And we have our moon crater. So
Like they're both used to provide directions. I mean,
We can remove one.
It's just open feedback.
yeah, sorry, I'm getting way too invested.
Okay, everyone got their creator?
Yeah. So we can remove
Okay,
this one and this one.
so let's add more, shall we? I think one creator is too few. So in Windows, you can press Control D. In Mac, you can press Windows D, and you should be able to duplicate whichever game object. So I'm just gonna duplicate this guy. I'm gonna use, remember, QWER, so I'm gonna use W to move him around. And you don't have to use the arrows. You see this blue box as well. You can just click over there and drag wherever to move it as well. So let's add a couple creators, keep duplicating, add another one, move it over here, and so on. So we go to the game scene. This looks already way better than what we started with.
Background same color as this one. You have
Alright,
So you can do.
so now we can go to the juice of it. We can start coding after everyone has this set up.
Okay, and
Okay, everyone following good?
okay.
Okay, so let's start coding. We're going to go to our assets folder. We're going to go to our scripts folder. And then you should see 2 scripts over there.
You don't need to have it show up all the time. You can have it like show up.
So if you manage to download the scripts I sent, they should be over there. I recommend you use them as templates for now, because if we all write them down, it's going to take us way too long. But I can explain a little bit about what they do.
Yeah, that's so we have we can do a black.
Yeah, only the CS files. Okay, let me check that we're recording. Yes. Okay.
Alright. Oh, so it's legible now. We can do
All
the
right.
same thing for this one. Small bar.
So for today's sessions, we're going to do 2 things like I showed in the beginning. Move our character and then shoot the projectiles. So the first script to do that is the script called player controller. So in Unity, we use the programming language C#. So you should be able to just double click and that should open up this program, which is called Visual Studio. So let me know if you guys were able to set that up.
We can definitely move to this side, right? Learn in the middle of the screen. Okay.
Did it work, Andre? Yeah? Okay, perfect.
Oh, yeah.
Bless you.
Xbox itself is right with the compact.
Keeping it everything center aligned.
Yeah.
I mean, in this case, it helps because when you have an eye,
Almost. And also we can, you don't really see this often, right? Like if you're shooting in the middle of the screen, you're not noticing this one. So do you have any suggestions on how we can make it pop up?
Let me know when you guys are inside Visual Studio like this.
Okay, yeah.
Thumbs up.
That's a good one.
Thumbs up.
Also,
Okay.
make the reticle a bit smaller and it's thick.
Okay, so now it's just a little bigger. You can make it smaller.
Okay, so now I'll be explaining a little bit about how this script works and how we add components in Unity and how we can work with collisions. So first off, what the hell is this? So beginning here, these are called our definitions. So we define what are we using. We're using Unity Engine, so we are at the top of every single script. And then we have what we call a class. Think of the class as the entire script and everything that's inside. So think of it as a piece of paper and everything that's inside, that's the class. And then it inherits something called a mono behavior. So all scripts in C# in Unity inherit this behavior. But let's say you had, I don't know, different types of enemies, right? So you could make it inherit different things like an enemy behavior or like player behavior, whatever. But that's a bit more advanced. Then we're going to look at variables. So let's start with this. What does serialized field mean? Serialized field means that we want to show something in Unity, to show a parameter. So before even diving deeper into that code, let's grab our player over here and let's drag and drop into him the player controller script, just like that.
Basically, that's it.
So we go ahead and do that. That should add the script.
One thing I should note,
Like I was talking previously in the inspector, you'll see that things start adding up. So we got the renderer, the animator, the controller, and so on.
not necessary.
So let me know if you guys were able to add the scripts.
Probably be better off with it.
Yeah. So we can see this one. Do you really need this one? Everybody knows like.
Alright, so if y'all got that, I'm going to explain a bit more about what is a serialized field. So if we just remove this, I want you to see what happens. So I'm just going to delete that, press Ctrl S to save, and then see what happens. Go back to Unity. You see this move speed we had before? So now it's going to be gone. So what a serialized field does is it lets you see things in Unity so you can tweak them. Games are about iteration, so you might want your character to jump higher, to have more damage, to have more HP. So it's good to have things you can change here in the editor. So let's bring that back in by typing open and close bracket, serialized field, just like that. And it has to be on top of the variable. So in C# we have a couple of types of variables. The most common ones are private and public. Private means only this class can access it. So only this code can access this variable. So you have a private HP, only the guys over here can access it. If you have another script that's trying to get that, it cannot do that. And then we also have the public type. So public is everyone can get it. But the problem with having public is we have two different scripts that play with HP, right? And they can override each other. So it's good to have a good structure for your components. So why do we have private here, but we can still see it in the inspector? It's because we have this serialized field. So if we were to remove that, you guys saw that it didn't appear, right? So just to show again, we don't see the move speed. But if we change it to public, by default, it's also going to show inside the engine. But like I was saying, it's not really good practice to have important numbers be public and shared between scripts. So I highly encourage you to do a private variable and give it the serialized field attribute, just like that. Okay, next up we have the rigid body. So what the hell is a rigid body? Rigid body is what Unity uses to calculate physics for everything, gravity, acceleration, and so on. So let's go back to our Unity scene, click in our player, and we're going to be adding a new component. So click here in Add Component, right there, and that should open a little search bar where we can search. So just search for a rigid body, and you should see two options. Rigid body is for 3D, rigid body 2D is for 2D. So let's add a rigid body 2D over there. Let me know if you guys were able to add your rigid body. And after you add it, it should look something like this. Okay, thumbs up. Everyone got the rigid body? So let's test what the hell a rigid body does in your game. Let's go to game scene, maximize by double clicking, and then press play. So now our dude is completely affected by gravity. He's in a free fall. But this is a top-down game. We don't want him to just be affected by gravity. So did everyone see their guy fall down? After adding your rigid body? So what we're going to do in order to make sure he doesn't fall, that he's not affected by gravity, since this is a top-down shooter, we're going to go here. There should be a variable over here that says, where is it? Okay, you see this that says gravity scale? So that's how fast gravity acts. So let's just set that to 0. And then if we do that, we shouldn't have a problem. Now let's go ahead and change our move speed because we want to move around. Let's change it to something like 5. And let's go back in the game. So what should happen right now? We should be able to move. And there should be no gravity that pulls us down. So I'm gonna go click play. And if I press my WASD keys, you can see that I can move around. But before we dive into this, I want to explain a bit more about the code and how it all works. So that rigid body that we created, here we have what we call another object. So we have a private, only access here, rigid body 2D. So this is what we call the type. So you have many types. This is float, which means floating point or a decimal number. Then we also have an int, which is an integer. For example, we have a double, which is a floating point but even more precise. And you have all of the Unity types, such as the rigid body 2D in this case. So we just created a private rigid body RB2D, and we also have two axes that we're going to be working with. We have the vertical and the horizontal. So that's going to be your X and Y movement. So these are just numbers. A float is a number, like 3.2, 5.7. Then in a wake, we're going to get that component. So Unity does not do this by default. So we're going to get that component. So we're telling the script, okay script, please get this so we can play with it. And then in updates, we have our axes over here. Oops. So you can just get rid of this. This is redundant. Our floats over here. And what does this do? So our horizontal axis, which we actually said it should be a floating point number, 3.2, 5.7, whatever, it's going to get the horizontal axis of Unity. So that's going to be either your WASD keys or your arrow keys, so you can move around. So horizontal is going to be A and D, left and right. Vertical is going to be up, down, WS. So once we have these numbers, we want to move. So we're going to change the velocity for rigid body. So we do rigid body RB2D dot velocity. So how you access things is you add a dot. So let's say we want to access, I don't know, the mass, right? For some reason we want the game to become heavier. So we do rigid body dot mass, and then we can play with that number. Or rigid body dot gravity scale, and that's the way you change things around. Okay. So what do we do with that? We access it and we create a new vector too. So is anyone here familiar with vectors and how they work? Yeah? Anyone want to like explain in general what a vector is? Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
It's like a line. The line indicates like has a magnitude.
Exactly. It's basically a point. So just having an X and a Y, right? So, oh, by the way, I didn't tell you how to comment in C#. So to comment, you just do 2 slashes right like that. And that's just going to be text that you can add so that you can know what's going on. So yeah, a vector has it's just a point. Basically, a point in space with an X and Y coordinate with a direction, magnitude, and angle. So what we're going to do here is change the velocity to a new vector. What vector, what velocity do we want? In the x-axis, we're going to have our x. So our x is going to be 1 or -1, left or right. And then vertical is going to be up and down, 1 or -1. So the two components, x and y, are those right there. And we're going to multiply by our move speed. You guys remember move speed, the one we had here that we can access? So that's the way we're going to access this and make our player go faster or slower. So why don't we go back into Unity and test having a speed of like 20 or something outrageous like that. So let's just go ahead and play. And he's gonna fly like that. Way too fast. So that's how you can tweak variables in your game. So now that we have movement, let's go do something more complicated. Let's do collisions. So sorry.
How do we prevent the character from falling down? How do we turn off the
Oh, yeah. So you go to your player. There is this called the gravity scale. And make sure you set that to 0. So that there's no gravity. Okay, was everybody able to get their character moving and everything? The basics?
Because the ones that work on my computer, they're not good.
Okay. So now I know many of you guys were interested in colliders. So in Unity there are many types of colliders. Right now we're going to play with the box collider. So here in Add Components, we just click over here, go to Collider, type that, and we see all the types of colliders Unity has for us. So let's use a box collider 2D for our character. Click over there, and that's going to create this new thing. So if we zoom in and see our game, that green box is going to be that collider. But you might see that it's offset from the character. Let's make it closer, let's make it more realistic. So you can click this button that says Edit Collider, and that's going to let you fit it perfectly to your character, just like that. So let's do something like such.
Okay, yeah, the lead, right?
And then for the legs. And now we should have a better collider for that. And now let's see, we also want to add colliders to all of the rocks, right? But it's going to take ages if we add the colliders one by one. So let's just delete all of the rocks and keep just one. So if you guys remember, use that delete key, so we can delete that. And on this single rock, let's add a collider as well. So same process, add components, box collider 2D, and let's make sure we scale it properly. So in games, it's usually a good idea to have forgiving colliders, because that makes it easier for your player. If you have like pixel perfect colliders, they're just gonna rage quit. So it's good practice to have something forgiving like this. Alright, so now we have a collider in both our creator and our player. Let's say we want to add more craters, right? So if we want to make changes to one object and make sure it updates to everyone, you're gonna have many players, many creators. There's something really useful in Unity called prefabs. The way you make a prefab, let's go to our prefabs folder. I'm just gonna delete this for now. And you just drag and drop from here to the prefabs folder, like that. And that's going to create a prefab for us. So what the hell is a prefab? Is this turns blue like that. And if we do any change in this object by double clicking, it's going to update all of the creators in our scene. So now we can just keep drag and dropping creators, and all the new creators we add have already the collider set up like that, which is great. So I recommend, before you make levels for your game, things like that, have ready your characters, your enemies, your ground, all of the hazards you have as prefabs. And then when you make the game, it's as easy as just dragging and dropping to create a level, which is great. So let's just add a couple creators to make this look cool. And now let's try going to the game and moving around and seeing what happens. So as you can see, we have collisions and we have this weird rotation going on. So we do not want our player to rotate in this case. The way we're going to make sure that doesn't happen is by disabling rotation in the Z-axis. So we're going to click in our player, and there should be some information here. There's something that says constraints. So we have our X and Y axis, right? But in Unity, we are in 3D space. So we have a third coordinate. It looks something like this. So which axis you guys think we should need to disable in order to make sure we don't rotate in that axis? So if this is our X and our Y, if you were to rotate on X, it would be like this. Our Y would be like this. And our Z would be like this. So which one do you guys think we should disable for this? You got it. So let's disable the Z-axis. So if we were to rotate with the R key, with the E key, like we were saying, this is the Z-axis of rotation. So we want to make sure our character doesn't do this. This is bad. So yeah, we click here in our player, and then freeze rotation on the Z-axis. So that should fix it. We can go back into the game, maximize, and then if we move around, we should not stumble into things. So now that's much better. So we can collide with that, and it's all good. We should also be able to collide with the enemy if we add colliders or anything else. And let's look at time. Yeah, I think that's about time. So there's other features in the game. Now you guys have the basics of how the code works. You have the basics of how to navigate Unity, how to add sprites, animations. So you can learn other things based on this, like how to add sounds, how to add custom behaviors. And I'll leave to you guys as homework, if you want to learn, to apply all of what we learned, but to add the gun to our player. So in order to make the gun work, you're going to need to add a ray gun to the player. So you have the sprite of the ray gun right here. It looks something like that. You're going to have to add it to the player, scale it properly. Then you're going to use what we call a hierarchy. So let me just do that. I'm just gonna drag and drop it. I'm gonna make it size 10 by 10, for example. And let's just move it around. So we want it to be a part of our character, right? We don't want the ray gun to be here and the character to be here. So in Unity, we use what is called the parent and child structure. So we grab the ray gun we created and drop that into the player. We're going to see it opens like a little indent. And then it opens this little flag you can click to drag and drop. So let's reset the ray gun to 0, 0. And you might notice this is not the 0, 0 of the world. This is the 0, 0 of the character. So the neat part about that is that if we move our player around, we can go ahead and click play. And if we move the player, you can see how the ray gun is stuck to the player. It follows him around. So that is how you use the child and parent structure in Unity. So I'm going to leave to you as homework to figure out how the hell this script works, which is the ray gun controller. So you're going to have to drag and drop the script, then read a little bit about it, then try to implement prefab. So for example, this is going to have a prefab, which is array. So you guys might notice here on sprites, we have the ray. Over here, this, which is like a little bullet. So I'll leave to you as homework to implement the shooting to the gun. And whenever you're done, you can publish that to programming and show everyone else how cool you are, that you got your character to shoot. So yeah, I'll leave this time up to questions. If anyone has any questions, anything I can help with. And that's about it. Anyone have any questions?